There are very few things in life as intense, as all consuming, and just generally unhealthy as a teenage infatuation. And I'm pretty, confident in saying that we've all probably been there. I've definitely been there. I've told you many times before, I was a super dramatic goth kid as a teenager. Chances are, if I wasn't madly in love with someone one minute, I was probably in a dark room listening to the Ava Adore album by the Smashing Pumpkins on repeat, which I still do from time to time, and just like pondering the meaning of my existence if I'm not going to be with that person, before 5 minutes later meeting the next one. And if you weren't the obsessor or the infatuator, if that is even a word, you were probably on the receiving end. So one way or another, we've probably all experienced that crazy, temporary insanity of teenage infatuation at some point. But the good news is that most of us, well, by and large, most of us, grow up, we mature, we move on, and our crazy dramatic teenage years become something funny and embarrassing that we can look back on and we can poke fun at and we can reminisce about. Unless, of course, you're one of the minority who allows your infatuation to turn you into a murderous psychopath. In which case, you've pretty much screwed the pooch on your entire life and the lives of everybody around you. But before we get into today's case, welcome back to the Criminal Spud, where we explore some true crime in a short and informal way. As always, some of the content we discuss might be disturbing or distressing at times. So if this is not your kind of jam, or if you're not in the headspace today, that is absolutely fine. Go ahead and press skip. But on the other hand, if you do enjoy this kind of content, please let me know by liking and subscribing. Now, without further ado, let's get into the case of Keri Ann Murphy. So we're going to a town called Humble, Texas, and the year is 2010, which was a bit of a strange mix bag year. It was a little bit of a flopsky music wise. I know I always like to point out the good music in a year. I mean, we had our Katy Perry, we had our Rihanna, Gaga was still relatively new at this time, and we had that really irritating song by Justin Bieber, the Baby Baby song. Even movie-wise, like Shutter Island and Inception came out, which are excellent movies, but they were like mindfuck movies. I'm like, I still don't know. Was he crazy? Was he not crazy in the end? Did he just want the lobotomy to erase the memories of murdering his family? Who's to know? But 2010 did give us good things. It gave us Love Hate. It gave us Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, The Walking Dead, The End of the Hills. No shade. And we were also coming to the end of our first season of Glee. Now, that is particularly relevant to today's story. I never watched Glee. I had plenty of friends who watched Glee, and I remember making fun of them because it just seemed like the weirdest concept. We don't have Glee per se over here. From what I understand, it's like a choir. It's like competitive choir, and it's an extracurricular activity that people do at high school. I don't know if they do it at college level. But when I think of like Glee clubs, I think of like Sister Act 2, I think of American Pie, things like that. Whereas over here, we don't really have that. We have like boring, dry choir that's all about Jesus. And it's not really, a fun, cool thing to do. It's not really a popular choice. Most of the kids I remember in the choir at school were like children of faculty members or like the people who did competitive debate on the weekend, which was not many. But here we are anyway in Humble, Texas, in this high school called Nimitz Senior High School. And this show, Glee, like I said, it's finishing its first season and Glee Club has suddenly exploded. It's like the thing that everybody wants to do. It's the activity all the kids want to be part of. So the Glee Club kids or the choir kids have become like the it crowd. Like it's like the coveted, group to be in. And I don't know, like, is that still a thing? Is there still like cool kids and not so cool kids? It's been a minute since I've been in secondary school, so I'll defer to anybody out there who has teenagers. Maybe we're just like super woke now and everyone just respects each other and intermingles. So who knows? But in 2010, in this Nimitz Senior High School, there was a junior varsity Glee club. So like the freshman class, they're all around 15, 16 years of age. And their kind of like leader or queen bee, if you will, was a 15-year-old girl called Keri Ann Murphy. Now, Keri seemed to have been a little bit of a mean girl, a little bit of a brute. There's differing opinions of her from her peers. So she was obviously part of this clique, this Glee Club clique. And some of them had really nice things to say. And, she was super outgoing and she was really confident and she was a great loyal friend. She'd always have your back. But then there was other opinions of people, again, who were friends of hers, who would say, she could be really mean at times. She could be very brash and rude. She very much liked to be in charge, like the bossy boots kind of character. She was maybe overly assertive at times. Now, other friends of hers kind of put it down to she had a bit of a shitty home life. Well, not a shitty home life, but there was a lot of tension at home between her parents. Her parents didn't have the happiest marriage, and I believe that there was extramarital affairs and things like that going on. So she was going home at night to, an atmosphere where there was maybe a lot of conflict, a lot of, like I said, tension. So she was carrying possibly some of that with her. And it was nearly like, roll the dice. What kind of version of Keri are you going to get today? Which, look, can be true of a lot of teenagers. But for Keri in particular, because she was such a dominant personality, her mood swings were very much felt throughout her friend group. So you might get like the extrovert, happy-go-lucky, ride or die kind of friend energy, or you might get her on a particularly bad day and she would be like a bulldozer. You would not want to be on her radar because she would eat you for breakfast. So it was very much up and down with Keri, but I feel like more than not she was liked. She had a peer group around her. Obviously she had a friend group and she was part of this Glee Club. And she also had an admirer. So there was this guy called Zane. He was a couple of years older than Keri and he was a bit of a loner. He was like the emo kid and he took a liking to Keri and he would be friendly to her. I think she considered him like a friend, but nothing more. Like she had absolutely no interest in him whatsoever. And even like Keri's other girlfriends, they were kind of very aware of the fact that he was a bit older than them. So they weren't really interested in hanging out with him. So yeah, he was just kind of off to the side. She didn't really have any romantic feelings or intentions towards Zayn whatsoever, but she was nice to him. Like she was friendly to Zayn. Now, around this time, someone else came into Keri's life that she was very, very interested in. And it all happened around the Christmas time of 2010. So, of course, Glee Club, they're preparing like their Christmas end of year show that they're going to put on. So there's the Junior Varsity Glee Club, which Keri is part of. She's 15 years old. And then there's the older bunch, the Varsity Glee Club, which Rebecca Keller is part of. And Rebecca Keller is 19 years old at this time. Now, 4 years of an age difference might seem pretty much negligible to you or I. Like, when you're an adult, 4 years is not a lot. But when you're a child, and let's be very clear, Keri is a child at this point. She's 15 years of age. 4 years is quite a big gap. And not just friend-wise, this relationship becomes far more than friendship. And it becomes far more than friendship pretty quickly. So Rebecca and Keri, they're like two magnets and they click, they get on, they instantly become like super close. And Rebecca, like I said, she's an older student. She's a bit of a loner. People don't know a whole lot about Rebecca. They know that her nickname is Bunny. They don't know why her nickname is Bunny, but her nickname is Bunny. And they know that she's openly bisexual. Now, Keri had never really expressed any feelings towards women before, so this was kind of new to her friends, but they didn't really bat an eyelid. They kind of thought, look, if you're into her, you're into her, we're supportive, we have no issue. They did think it was a little bit weird that she was older. They were taken very off guard by this connection, like it literally just came out of absolutely nowhere. And the friends were a little bit concerned or worried about how Keri's parents would feel if they found out about this relationship, because her parents were very conservative, Christian, God-fearing types. So yeah, that might be a bit of an issue. But this went on for a couple of months. Rebecca and Keri were super close. They were like openly affectionate towards each other in public and around the friends. So it got to the point where Keri said, listen, I'm just going to come out and I'm going to tell my parents and I'm going to let them know and let the chips fall as they may. So she did. Keri goes home and she sits down with her mum, Marianne, and she tells Marianne about this new relationship that she's in with Rebecca. And yeah, look, it's safe to say that Marianne is taken by surprise, but she supports her daughter. She lets her know that, listen, if this is what makes you happy. I support you. I love you unconditionally. And Keri can kind of breathe a sigh of relief because, I mean, best case scenario, right? Like this went so well, so much better than she was expecting. And I mean, the sky's the limit now. She can just be completely open and out with her relationship with Rebecca. There's no more hiding that needs to happen. However, one thing that her mother, Marianne, was not aware of when Keri kind of came out to her was that there was an age difference of 4 years. So it took a couple of months before Marianne actually realised that Rebecca was 19 years of age. And at this point, Marianne says, hold on a second. Not happening. You are not dating a 19-year-old. You are 15. This will not be continuing. So you need to break this off immediately. So she was not happy. And I can completely understand if I was in Marianne's shoes and my 15-year-old came home to me and told me that they were dating someone who was 19, I would not be happy either. So I kind of have Marianne's back on that one. But of course, this is, devastating to Keri. She's like, there's no way. I'm so madly in love with Rebecca. There's no way I can break up with Rebecca. And at this stage, they've been together for months. So she's fully invested in this relationship. So yeah, as well, if you tell a teenager not to do something, if you forbid a love, it's just going to make them want to do it more, isn't it? Let's be honest. So she kind of appeases her mom and says, okay, look, fine, we won't continue going out. But I mean, read between the lines, we all know that it was always going to continue. And this brings us up to spring of 2011. So Rebecca has graduated. She has now left high school because, like I said, she's 19. And does she go to college? No. Does she get a job? No. What does she do with herself, you might ask? Absolutely jack shit. She basically just becomes Keri's full-time creepy older girlfriend. And Keri's mum, Marianne, she keeps catching Keri still contacting this Rebecca chick. And her mum is not backing down. So the mum is doing everything that she can. She is grounding her. She is confiscating her phone. She is trying to cut ties with this Rebecca chick. And just hopefully she'll move the fuck on and go live her life. But yeah, it's to no avail because Bunny, aka Rebecca, buys this burner phone to give to Keri so that when her mum confiscates her main phone, she'll still have this burner phone that they can continue texting on. And they call it the Bunny phone because, as mentioned, Rebecca's nickname is Bunny. We don't know why. It's just Bunny. Strange, I know. But anyway, so they've got this secret burner phone that they can continue chatting back and forth on. And their relationship starts to become a lot more secretive, a lot more insular. Obviously, they're sneaking around from Marianne, but she's starting to kind of cut off a little bit from her friend group as well. Because as you can imagine, this loser, Rebecca, she's got absolutely nothing else going for her in her life. So all she's doing is sitting home all day and waiting for Keri to text back, who's in school and in Glee Club and has friends and a daily routine. So Rebecca's becoming more and more jealous, more and more possessive, and more in need of reassurance from Keri. And Keri's friends are starting to get a little bit concerned that this relationship is probably not a positive one for Keri. They've gleaned that not only is Rebecca a bit of a loser who's got nothing going for her, but they've gleaned that it's causing a lot of problems between Keri and her mum. It's causing a lot of sneaking around, a lot of lies, a lot of tension, and it's probably more trouble than it's worth. They can see that Keri's getting her phone confiscated. She's getting grounded all the time. She's not really adhering to the grounding. She's sneaking out at night. She's been a lot more disobedient and rebellious than she was before she met Rebecca. So Keri's friends can definitely notice a difference in her. And they also are concerned with how serious the relationship is coming across. So Keri does mention to her friends that her and Rebecca have already talked about getting engaged, possibly eloping. Once again, Keri is 15 years of age. So the friends are like, hold on a second. What are you talking about? This is weird. This is way too fast. This is way too serious. You need to slow your roll. And this kind of disapproval from the friends nearly pushes Keri further away and further into the arms of Rebecca. And this just perpetuates this kind of isolation that they're going through. They're kind of cutting themselves off from the rest of the world, and they're just becoming these two peas in a pod who, they're the only ones who can understand, and they're the only ones who they can trust. So not going in the healthiest of directions, I think we can agree at this point. And then shit really hits the fan, because in addition to Keri going behind her mother's back and against her wishes and sneaking out despite being grounded and meeting up with Rebecca when she knows that she's not supposed to, she takes it a step even further and she starts to sneak Rebecca into the house when she thinks that either no one's home, they're at work, or they're grocery shopping, or at nighttime when people are gone to bed. So she's playing a very, very risky game here. And of course, she's going to get caught. Like, let's be clear, she lives with 3 other people. So Keri lives with her mum, her dad, and her brother. And they live in this house that's all on one level. The family are on high alert for this girl, Rebecca, who she's not supposed to be sneaking out and hanging around with. And she, for some reason, thinks that she's going to get away with sneaking Rebecca into the house. Not exactly a rocket scientist, but listen, when you're young and you're in love, you make bad decisions. So anyway, Rebecca is in the house one day with Keri and they decide to get into the shower. So again, somewhere that they're not going to hear people coming home as easily. It's different if you're in your room, you're hanging out, you're watching TV together and you hear the door go and you can go, shit, I better climb out the window. No, they get into the shower. And Keri's dad comes home. So I can't think of anything more horrifying, to be in any person's position in this scenario. Horrifying all round. But the dad comes home and he finds Rebecca and Keri in the shower together and he flips his lid. He loses his mind. He is furious. And understandably. But this is the final straw. They're not playing anymore. So they tell Keri and Rebecca, this is it. You end this now. You stay away from our daughter, because if this happens again, if we ever find you near our daughter again or in our house again, we are calling the police. So this is your one and only warning. Back off. So they give that warning to Rebecca very clearly. And they do the usual, you're grounded, give us your phone, which makes absolutely no difference because we know she sneaks out constantly. And we also know that she has that burner phone, the bunny phone, where she can just continue talking to Rebecca, which she does. So it really doesn't make the slightest bit of difference. And only a month after this whole shower debacle, Keri's mum wakes up in the middle of the night and says, I'm going to go get a glass of water and I'm going to pop my head in just to check on Keri, just to make sure she's in her room and she hasn't, sneaked out of the house. And she does. So Marianne goes and checks on Keri. But when she goes into Keri's room, she finds not only Keri in the bed, she finds Rebecca in the bed with her. And this is game over. She is not fucking around anymore. She's done. So immediately Marianne says, right, I'm calling the police, and she does. And she has Rebecca arrested for trespass. And she also has a restraining order filed against Rebecca. And everybody at the school finds out about this. So all of Keri's friends hear all about this. They are super freaked out that it had to get to this level. But at the same time, they can kind of see a little bit of a change in Keri. Maybe it's finally settling into her brain that this relationship is not good and that it just needs to be done with. And maybe this is the end of Rebecca. They're not going to hear or see any more of this girl again. And it gets up to the end of the year. So it's the end of school year performance of the Glee Club. And Keri is out there. She's front and center. She's doing her thing and she's kind of fully back to her old self. And she's socializing with her peers once again as she was before she met Rebecca. So everything is looking pretty promising. They're going off now into summer vacation and hopefully all of this drama is behind them. So we get up to July the 16th of 2012 and it's late into the night, early into the morning. It's a little after 1 a.m. when this frantic call comes through to 911. And it's Keri Ann Murphy. And Keri Ann tells the 911 operator that she had to flee her house. These 2 men have broken in. She's unharmed, but her mother has been attacked and she's in bad shape. And she didn't have a phone to call them sooner, so she had to run to the neighbour's house because her mother had confiscated her phone and please send help. So police, of course, are dispatched to the Murphy household. and they immediately see that the back window has been broken, and they make their way inside. Now, the house doesn't seem to be very disturbed. It doesn't look like anyone was breaking in to steal anything. And they're calling for some kind of a response to see if there's anybody in the house, and there's no reply whatsoever. So they make their way into Mary Ann, Keri's mother's bedroom. And to say that Mary Ann had been left in bad shape is the understatement of the century, because Mary Ann has been completely massacred in this bed. She has been stabbed 73 times. She's been stabbed in the arms, the chest, the neck, the face. She's had her throat slashed from ear to ear. And this was obviously not some loud, raucous break-in that alerted Mary Ann to this, because Mary Ann slept with a loaded pistol under her pillow, and there was no indication that she had tried to reach for this. She had no defensive wounds. This was clearly a blitz attack that took her by complete surprise, most likely as she slept. So immediately the police are looking at the level of overkill, the level of viciousness that is present here with this murder, because Mary Ann, she's gone. There's nothing they can do to revive her. And in fact, it doesn't look like she is gone as recently as Keri Ann had kind of suggested, because they can notice with some of the wounds, the blood is already starting to clot. In addition to this, Keri has suffered absolutely no wounds. She's not been attacked whatsoever. She says that she saw two masked men leaving the house, but they made no attempts to accost her. So yeah, strange straight out of the gate. So they kind of know this was a targeted attack. They don't buy the whole burglary scenario. There was nothing taken from the house. And on top of that, the smashed window, that the burglars allegedly made to enter the house, the hole that was left in this window was not A, big enough for a person to crawl through, let alone two, and B, it was too far away from the door handle for them to be reaching inside and opening the door from the inside. Also, the glass was outside of the house, which would lead the investigators to conclude that this window had been smashed from the inside of the house. So immediately they could smell a rat. They just weren't sure who was to blame here. And as I said, the relationship between Mary Ann and her husband was not great. It was pretty turbulent. There was some extramarital affairs going on in the background, as I had kind of alluded to earlier. And they were able to gauge very quickly from looking at Mary Ann's phone and her most recent call logs and texts that she was texting back and forth and speaking back and forth to a guy that she was kind of seeing on the side. So they immediately looked into this guy, but his alibi was rock solid. And of course they looked into Mary Ann's husband, Keri's father, because the spouse is always going to be number one, aren't they? It's not our first rodeo. We know this. And when they did tell Mary Ann's husband about this attack, he apparently didn't show a whole lot of emotion. Now, this could be explained away by many things. It's not necessarily to say that he didn't care. He could have very well been in shock. But they went through the motions, they checked him out, and they looked into his whereabouts and his alibi around the time of Mary Ann's attack. And they cleared him completely, along with Keri's older brother. He was also checked out and cleared. So they were really now looking at Keri. Keri was basically the only one who was in the house with Mary Ann at the time of this alleged attack. And from looking at the crime scene, it's very clear that there was something off with the story. Now, they didn't suspect that she had done anything, but they did suspect that she probably knows a little bit more about what happened than she is letting on. So they bring Keri in to do a polygraph test. And of course, the minute she starts answering questions, it goes downhill fast. And she crumbles, she cracks like a cheap heel. And she says, okay, fine, I didn't do this, but I know who did it. And she then proceeds to give the police a selected few details about the lead up to this horrific attack on her mother. And she tells the police that her mother had kind of busted her trying to sneak out. But Keri was trying to explain that I wasn't trying to sneak out. I was just going outside to investigate a noise. I thought I could hear somebody banging around outside. Now, I mentioned before that they live on this house that's all one level. It's all on the ground floor. And of course, Marianne is like, I call bullshit on that. Get back inside. So Keri tells the police that in an attempt to convince her mother that she wasn't lying and to maybe get herself off the hook and out of trouble, she enlisted the help of her good friend Zane. Do you remember Zane? The one who was basically the unrequited love slave of Keri, and he was the older guy who kind of hung around her and wanted to be a couple, but she wasn't really digging Zane that much. Yeah, that Zane. So Keri tells the police that she reached out to her good friend Zane for his help, and all Zane was meant to do was to kind of rattle around the outside of the house, make some noise, maybe bang on the window or the wall, maybe freak her mom out a little bit so that her mom would kind of say, oh my gosh, maybe my daughter Keri isn't a liar, maybe there is somebody outside, and maybe that's what she was investigating. But apparently Zane just took it way too far, and he came into the house and he attacked Marianne, and then he convinced Keri that they should just make it look like a burglary. So the police go to Zane's house and they arrest Zane, and they bring him in and he confesses the whole thing. His story completely lines up with Keri's, and he says, okay, I was going to help her out. I was just supposed to come over. I was supposed to maybe scare her mom, freak her out a little bit, make a bit of noise. But before I knew it, I was inside and I went up the stairs and into her room, and I just stabbed her again and again. And I think I stabbed her about 4 or 5 times, and then it was too late. She was gone. So we had to create this plan. We had to make it look like a burglary. And the police were just listening to this kid confess to this vicious attack. And they were thinking 2 things that you're probably thinking right now. Number 1, she wasn't stabbed 4 or 5 times. She was stabbed 73 times. So is it possible that this kid just completely blacked out and thought that he stabbed her maybe a handful of times and just kept going all the way up to number 73? Or maybe did he stab her a couple of times and then somebody else came in afterwards and continued the attack post-mortem? But the second thing, if you did catch it, was a lot more concerning, because Zane said when he came into the house, he went up the stairs into Marianne's bedroom. And as I've mentioned, the Murphy house is all on one level. There is no upstairs. So at this point, it seemed very clear that Zane was lying through his hole. He had not even been inside the Murphy house to know that there was no upstairs. So why is this kid sitting here and confessing to this gruesome, violent murder? What on earth was going on here? And around this time, they were continuing to look into Keri and the relationship that she had with her mother. They were talking to, friends and family members. And this whole issue with Rebecca and the restraining order and the trespass arrest, this all came to light. As did the bunny phone. So, the burner phone that Rebecca bought for Keri so that when her main phone got confiscated by Marianne, they could continue talking. Yeah. So somebody mentioned to the police that she had this burner phone that she used to use to chat to Rebecca. So of course the police managed to get their hands on this bunny phone, and they were able to subpoena all of the call logs, and it became very clear that not only did Keri have this phone at the time of her mother's attack and therefore wouldn't have needed to go to the neighbour's house to call the police because she had this phone, but she was also in contact with Rebecca right up until this attack happened. So they bring Rebecca Keller in to have a little chat, and Rebecca wastes no time and tells the police that Keri attacked her mother. And she tells the police the whole lead up and the reason as to why Keri attacked her mother. So she says that her and Keri had continued on their relationship in secret. And Marianne had basically become suspicious, as you would, And she had come in to Keri and asked to essentially do a bit of a spot check on her phone. She'd told her, unlock this phone, I want to look through it. But Keri, knowing that she had all of these messages back and forth to Rebecca, wouldn't unlock the phone for her mother. So her mother confiscated the phone and said, that's it, I'm bringing it into work with me on Monday. I'm going to get it unlocked there and we'll see what's on this phone. But Keri began to panic because not only was her mum going to find messages back and forth to Rebecca, which is not good at all, but she's also going to find some indecent images and videos that the two had shared back and forth. So she knew that this was going to be much bigger trouble for Rebecca. And Rebecca is telling the police this whole backstory, and a motive is now starting to become very clear in their eyes. And she tells the police that it was out of desperation and panic that Keri stabbed and killed her mother, Marianne. Now, Rebecca admits that she was there, that Keri did ask her to come over, and that she saw this attack happen. And she does also admit that she helped to clean up after the attack to an extent. She helped her stage the burglary, and she took a lot of the evidence away with her and basically disposed of the weapon and the clothing and things like that, and then told Keri, hide the bunny phone and go to a neighbour's. So the police confront Keri with everything that Rebecca has told them, and Keri just breaks down and she confesses, and she knows that the jig is up. And both girls are charged with murder, accessory to murder, and they're taken into custody. Now, Keri is lucky enough to get bailed out, so I think her grandparents put together a couple of quid and they were able to just get her out on bail until the trial. Rebecca did stay in custody. She didn't have anybody to bail her out. But you would think, even given the fact that they're separated by prison walls, that it would be some kind of indication that this relationship is not healthy, it's not a good one. But no, this still did not deter them. They still maintained contact. So they would speak on the phone as Rebecca was in prison and Keri was out on bail waiting for a murder trial. Now, I have so many questions about this because at this point, I think Keri's 16 at the time. She's still under the age of consent, which at that time in that town was 17 years of age. So I am baffled as to how she was able to be in contact with this minor. Given everything that had happened, she was still able to speak on the phone to this child. It is mind-boggling. But anyway, they continued their conversations and their relationship via phone while Rebecca remained in custody. Now, these phone calls from prison, as we all know, are recorded. But whether or not these two girls realised that these calls were recorded, even though I'm pretty sure that they're told at the beginning of each of these prison calls that it's recorded, but what can I say? Kids don't make the most intelligent criminals. So they're chatting away on these phone conversations, and they're talking about the night of the attack. And Rebecca says to Keri that she's just glad that she didn't have to see it happen. And Keri tells Rebecca, well, I did see it happen. I was standing in the hallway and I saw the whole thing. And Rebecca kind of admonishes Keri and says, well, I told you to stay in your room. I told you not to watch. So we've got now 2 confessions to this horrific murder, and both of them so far have been false confessions, because as we come to learn, and as the police come to learn through these recorded calls, Marianne's murderer was not Zane, nor was it Keri. Marianne's murderer was Rebecca Keller. Now, are we surprised that creepy Rebecca, who groomed this child, is guilty of this horrific attack? No, I'm not really surprised that it was her that did this horrible thing. I'm more surprised that she got not 1 but 2 people to confess to her murder. How insane is that? Assumably, Keri convinced Zane to confess, and Zane was just so crazy about Keri that he said, yeah, okay. And it has been suggested afterwards that Zayn didn't really fully understand or appreciate the gravity of the situation, and he just thought that if he said he did it, he could just go home. So there's a lot of question marks around Zayn's fitness to give that confession to begin with and what his mental state was. But Keri was willing to take the fall for this murder of her own mother for Rebecca, who was more than willing to say, yeah, she did it, and let her take the fall because she was a minor, so she might not get as much time. But let's be honest, she was definitely going to get time, and she was going to be charged for the murder of her own mother. Like, what an absolute sociopath. And I'm horrified at Keri standing there watching her mother be savagely stabbed to death, probably waking up right in the last moments of her life, not knowing what was going on, and then confessing falsely to this, choosing to protect this crazy bitch Rebecca over her own flesh and blood, her own family. So there's a lot to be said, there's a lot to be debated, because she was so young and she was clearly groomed and manipulated. Like, if you're confessing to somebody else's murder and you know that they're selling you down the river and you're still happy to go along with it, I mean, you're not in your own right mind. But she was going to let Zayn take the fall for all of it. So my sympathy is quite limited for Keri, to be honest with you. And they both got serious time. So Rebecca obviously was, convicted for the murder and she got 60 years. And Keri with, I think, accessory, and she got 30 years, which I did think was quite a severe sentence for someone who was a minor at the time. But look, when you actually think about Mary Ann's last moments on this earth and what she went through and what she may or may not have understood, if she understood that her daughter was standing there watching, yeah, I'm not mad at the 30 years. I hope she does her 30 years. But that is it for this evening, guys. Thank you so much for joining me, and I'll be back again this weekend with another episode of The Criminal Spud. Have a lovely evening, set your house alarms, and as always, sweet dreams.